Welcome to another Inclusion Talks. My name is Paul Cisse, the founder of the National Diversity Awards, Inclusive CEOs and the Inclusive Top 50 and various other D&I initiatives. Today we have the amazing, utterly amazing Caroline Frankum. And now she's the CEO of Kantar. She's a multi-award winning CEO, a visionary, a strategist, an influencer, and defies the odds by positively disrupting the status quo. And that's on your LinkedIn status. And what LinkedIn status that is. How are you doing, Caroline?
Oh, I'm doing well, Paul. And thank you for the privilege of having this time with you and this important discussion. It's inspiring to have moments with you. So I know you're a very busy man, so thank you for giving me the time.
Not half as busy as you, Caroline. And we've met quite a few times now. I think the first time I heard you speak was at one of our Bloomberg events when we had a CEO panel. And you did blow me away. You was one of the highlights for me. Really talks a lot of sense with inclusion. Really one of these CEOs that really gets it and drives it from the very top. So it's my privilege to have you on here as well. So thank you very much.
Pleasure.
So today's Inclusion Talk, Caroline, is basically about, looking into your personal journey into D&I, what your, prospects are within the organization. We're going to look at, COVID and so on and so forth. But really, I'm interested in, you first. What is your journey into D&I? How did you get started? What influences you to get started within D&I and really champion it?
Well, my journey actually started years and years ago when I was a kid. And I didn't realize it at the time, but, that wonderful saying, the beauty of hindsight, definitely applies here. So when I was 10 years old, I had a stroke, which left me in a coma, unable to walk, talk, move, but able to see and hear everything. And that taught me many things. It was a unique inflection point, actually, for understanding the importance of empathy, because I could just sit and lie and watch how humans treated each other, but also the importance of having a voice. It felt really suffocating not being able to speak and have a voice. And frankly, it's nice that you said that I was inspiring and helpful at the Bloomberg conference, because my biggest fear for many years was public speaking and raising my voice because of this journey. So what that experience taught me was resilience, the importance of resilience. So when I went through my recovery period of learning to walk and talk again, doctors instilled in me that if I gave up for a week, I'd go back a month. If I gave up for a month, I'd go back a year, because I was retraining my brain, essentially. Now, that's always been part of my DNA going forward. That's a strength and a weakness, as all strengths are, because I can overwork and be over-determined on things. But I will say it's been an important factor of my mission to really help drive a much more inclusive business, but also society and world as well. That's a real passion there. So what really started in that part of my journey was my passion for people, the understanding that empathy is critical, but resilience is a key part of empathy and being able to bounce back. And really understanding that everyone's an individual and everyone's good at something, but nobody's good at everything. And then I went back to school and I was bullied as the kid that walked and talked funny. And what that taught me was the importance of humor. Because I learned very quickly that if I took the mickey out of myself and made jokes, then I'd be left alone a little bit. But it wasn't the best journey in terms of understanding the power of humor, because it was a little bit self-deprecating. So what I now learn is the power of humor and the importance of humor even in the toughest times. Because what I also learned as I progressed through school and got stronger and better, and actually found a passion for tennis, which helped me mentally and physically recover, was that most often when people come at you with anger and bully you, it's usually a reflection of their own insecurities, not yours. So that was an important lesson for me. And it was also a very important lesson for me as I progressed in my career. Because frankly, I am a woman that's grown up in an industry that has been dominated by men. So gender diversity has always been very important for me, and being a role model for that has always been important for me. But I'm also very passionate about the fact that it's about us all being in this together. So men and women, it doesn't matter what the color of your skin is, what your gender is, what you believe in. You all have something unique to bring to help create a diverse world. And it's when we get those intersections together that things become really powerful. And then also my other big learning from all of the journey so far was some minority experiences are visible, some are invisible. But what you input into overcoming those challenges actually are privileges that pay back time and time again. And privilege in the sense that you can use them to help break down walls for other people. So that's kind of been the founding definition of my passion for people and D&I. And as I progressed through my career as a female, hitting the glass ceiling and then breaking through the glass ceiling to the C-suite, those things have been really important for me. So essentially, to sum it all up, every challenge that I went through, every bad experience I went through actually has made me smarter, tougher, wiser, stronger, learn faster, and have a much thicker skin. And goodness me, I need that right now, given all the challenges we're going through with things like COVID as well. So
that is really resonating with me. Actually, I felt like a tear coming to my eyes. I'm not joking. You know, to have a stroke and to go through all the bullying that you've been through, and I kind of went through a similar thing myself when I was fostered and didn't have no parents, and
right.
you know, not belonging, and went to an all-white school where you're the only black boy. It really resonates with me, and exactly right. It makes you stronger as a person. And I find so many leaders like yourself that have been such through adversity as a child. It can turn two ways. It can turn you, you know, into, you know, a life of deprivation, or it can turn you the other way of really high-flying CEOs, and that's what you are. You should be really extremely proud of yourself for what you've achieved from that start. And you know, when was it in a business sense that you really realized that you was making a difference within D&I? You know, as a business sense, when did you start your D&I journey?
It took me longer than it should have done, honestly. And that's why I really believe in the power of mentoring and paying back. It wasn't until I was in my late 30s, really. I as I said, I always worked incredibly hard. Sometimes that's not a strength of mine because work-life balance is always a challenge for me. But I've always passionate about working incredibly hard and working with people. I love, my friends will always say, because I started my career actually in media and did 15 years in media, and I made TV channels, I launched TV programs. I was a runner for some celebrities when I was at Classic FM. And then I joined Omnicom, which is a market research agency, and I was there for 7 years. And then I joined where I am now, Kantar, and I've been there for 4 years. But my friends are like, you went from the glamorous world of media to this kind of boring world of data. Why have you done that? And for me, I've always been driven by a passion for people and learning new stuff. So I think that's also important in my D&I journey as well. But it really started too late for me. Well, better late than never, right? But it was my never too late, right? Better late than never. You're absolutely right. In my late 30s, I was fortunate enough when I was at Omnicom to go to Harvard, and I was trained at Harvard by some of the Harvard lecturers. Wow. And they were so inspiring because they were such a diverse group of people, so clever, but IQ and EQ, so a good balance of IQ and EQ. And basically what they did was they kind of, I don't want to say tore you down, but did tear you down and then built you back up again. They helped you, and I guess the better way of saying it is they really helped me look in the mirror and truly deeply look at who I was, not aesthetically, but who I really was. Because, you know, I'd spent a lot of my life, even a lot of my career, trying to fit in. And the fact is I was never meant to fit in because I am a disruptor and I am different, but I didn't realize it until being there in that privileged situation. And they taught me that I was never meant to fit in because I was meant to be different and be out in front and help create visions and help drive forward. But yeah, it was really there in my late 30s that I realized that. And what a dream if it had been in my 20s and I hadn't wasted all that time trying to fit in with the in crowd that actually I didn't really resonate with anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And the in crowd is not always the best in crowd, you know.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm speaking experience from my daughter as well. You know, she's had previous troubles in school, and you know, she's wanted to fit in like you, and it's so difficult. But what advice would you give to anybody? I know we're going off topic, but I just love your story. What advice would you give anybody that has been through these tough situations, that don't think they've got any worth, and actually to get to the level that you are? Is there any tips that you could give them?
I'm going to unashamedly steal someone else's words, because I mentioned at the beginning that I got stronger through my passion for tennis and started to play and actually started to get quite good at it. And that then made me a bit more popular with the people that actually I shouldn't have wanted to be popular with, because they were the bullies. Anyway, Serena Williams for me is one of my inspirations, because she's such a phenomenal tennis player, but she's also an inspiring human being. And she used these words in an ad that that was created by WPP, and she said, if I'd waited to be invited in, I never would have stood out. And if I'd waited for change to happen, I never would have made a difference. I'm getting emotional now. Don't wait to be given the power, because here's what they don't tell you: you already have it. And for me, it makes me emotional, because that kind of sums up my life as a kid at school. And, you have a calling in life. Everyone has a purpose and a calling in life. And as long as you can get in and out of bed every day and feel happy with who you are, then that's great. That is great. And I think kids today, they get, all the social media stuff that goes on. They live in a world where they're under more pressure than, frankly, I ever was as a kid, with what you look like, whether you fit in. And I just think, be true to yourself, love yourself, but also be kind to others, because an act of kindness is so powerful, yet so simple. And again, taking loads of people's other words, but they're so inspiring. When Nelson Mandela, we were talking as a group at Kantar about the whole Black Lives Matters area and what we're doing there. And something that really resonated with me was when Nelson Mandela said, nobody's born to hate. Nobody's born to hate. You learn to hate. And if you can learn to hate, you can learn to love. And learning to love is so much easier. And that really, really resonates with me, because I went through that journey of trying to fit in, then actually going, I quite like myself. Just be you. Just be you. So I guess be you and be kind are the two things I would say to your daughter. Because if she's anything like you, Paul, she must be an amazing inspiration to so many people. And like you, probably doesn't realize how powerfully inspiring.
Yeah, she's super talented, and she can sing, she can dance, and when her friends around, she's doing the best dances. She's got an amazing voice. I completely agree. But role models like you, I always introduce you to, and I talk to her about role models like you, so that she knows that no matter what tough time she's going through, you can always achieve and get them ladders to achieve great things. And it's funny that you said about callings, and a lot of the things you say really resonates with me so much. I'm not joking. For instance, D&I isn't my calling, but the National Diversity Awards was my calling.
Right.
It opens the world up to so many community organizations, communities that I grew up with that helped me on my journey. And if you have a calling, make sure you act upon it, and that's one of the main things that I would say to everybody. But we're talking about in diversity inclusion, and you work for Kantar, which is a global company. Do you want to give us a little insight into Kantar and what it is first?
Yeah, so I'm one of the global CEOs at Kantar, and we are the world's leading market research agency. Our mission is to understand people, inspire growth, and we work with all sorts of brands to do that. So consumer brands, government brands, healthcare brands, e-commerce brands. So we're lucky that we have a very diverse mix of clients. And of course, that commands a very diverse approach in terms of how we think. But what I will say is I joined Kantar 4 years ago, and it's over the last 3 years that we've really taken a more dedicated focus to inclusion and diversity. And we sort of have 3 pillars that we work towards: TLC, talent, leadership, and clients. And it all sits underneath that. We've made some amazing progress over the last 3 years, but recent events have really been a stark reality check that we still have a very long way to go, and we need to do better. But I don't want to dismiss what we have done, because it has been progress, and I'm a true believer that progress should be celebrated. Yeah. So we have inclusion and diversity steering committees across the world, so in 22 different markets, and they really focus on a groundswell of culture. So they really focus on ethnicity, gender, flexible working, and also pride. We call it, pride and your sexual beliefs and your sexual positioning.
Yeah.
So they're the key things that they sort of focus on, but how they do it is very different.
Yeah.
So some recent examples are in the US, we focus on working mums. This was last year, and how we give working mums support when they're coming back to work. In Africa, we had an initiative called Building Bridges, and that was when 400 people got together on how to break down the barriers that aren't inclusive in their work areas. In Asia, we're focusing on, again, flexible working, but not just for parents, also for carers, because there's lots of carers there. So they're an amazing team of activists and active allies, because they flex and progress as things happen.
Yep.
And it isn't the same consistently across the world. There are different things that need to be dialed up and dialed down. I'm very proud also that we've built safe communities. That's been a big focus for us in Kantar. So I'm fortunate enough to be the global exec sponsor for Pride at Kantar. They are an amazing team. I mean, they blow my mind every time we get together, because they always assume positive intent, because I'm an ally. So when I first joined, they asked me to join. I was like, I'm really worried I'm going to say the wrong thing. I don't really know what I can and can't say. And they just said, we assume positive intent, and we'll guide you and support you if you do say something that insults us or isn't appropriate. But they're so loving, they're so collaborative, and they're so creative as well. They're Pride is a big celebration this month, and they were hoping to go out and celebrate and champion out on the streets, and haven't been able to do that, so they're doing it virtually. And we're also helping clients with some of our offers around what we call need scope. And need scope is really how you can help brands be irresistible, and they've built a framework around it to help brands be truly inclusive to LGBTQ plus communities. So really proud of that. We also have Colourful at Kantar. We also have what we call the emerging leaders, and they are 13 individuals that are the mini board, the shadow board to our actual Kantar board, which I'm on, the Exco. And they're amazing because they're our eyes and ears on the ground. They're very diverse. They're from across the globe, all sorts of different divisions that we have in Kantar, so different skill sets. And they are really bold at telling us where we need to improve as an Exco and a leadership team. And at the moment, we're focusing on trust in leadership with them. And it's refreshing at how honest they are. Sometimes you get, it's a bit like what I was saying before. I wasn't sure what to say when I joined the Pride at Kantar team. That they don't worry about that at all. They are brilliantly inspiring with being bold and telling us actually what needs to be said and heard. So just some examples.
Yeah. So it goes on to my first question. You kind of touched upon quite a lot already, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So obviously Kantar is a huge organization, global, and you're in charge of quite a lot of employees. And do you feel that you've successfully implemented D&I across each level of employment within your organization? If yes, how has this been done? And if no, what are your actions moving forward to make sure that this is to be done?
No, I don't think it's successful and it's a done deal. I think we've made good progress, which should be celebrated with some of the things I've mentioned, but we have a long way to go. It'd be remiss of me not to really call out the journey we've been on over the last couple of weeks around Black Lives Matter. A large population of Kantar is in America, and also in the UK as well, where that's really prevalent. And it's really been a wake-up call to us that we need to do better, and we need to be much more active allies. And it's about a balance between governance and groundswell as well, because this inclusion diversity is a long-term journey. There are some systemic things that need to change before we can actually really fundamentally make a sustainable difference in some areas. So, for example, government policies, for example, ensuring everyone has a vote. But if some of your population is in extreme poverty and don't have the opportunity to vote because they don't have a driving license or a social security number, there's already a barrier there. So it's a big, Black Lives Matter is so important to us. We have a lot of work to do there, because actually in Kantar, we don't struggle to have an ethnic minority representation and diversity there. We just struggled for them to get to the top. And that's we're currently focusing on unpicking that rather than coming out with a grand statement of here's what we're going to do. We're working through where the blockage is and how we improve that. You know, it'd be remiss of me not to call it out. We have an all-white executive leadership team at Kantar. So why is that happening? And again, it's different reasons across the globe because we're so big, 28,000 employees. Some people feel there is bits of the system that are colorblind. And then some people feel, well, I've learned loads of great stuff here. I'm actually going to go off and do my own thing and be an entrepreneur. So again, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. This is a long-term journey that we are working on and we want to do in a way that's meaningful and sustainable. But that doesn't mean we can't take short-term actions. So, for example, we've set up safe sharing sessions. And some of the stories that have come out, and anyone can join and share their story, and anyone can dial in and listen virtually. And I've been in tears, honestly, because the stories are so powerful and really help me understand, quite honestly with you, Paul, the term white privilege. Because I have to say, as a human reaction, internally, I was like, but you don't know anything about my life. It's been anything but privileged. I've been from challenge to challenge to challenge. But what I didn't understand until I heard some of these stories was that the system's working how it's meant to work because it was built by white males. And actually, until we fundamentally change that, we're not going to, you know, you could take all the employees out of a business and repopulate it and you still have the same issues because of the system. It's not the only reason, but it's a key part of it. So my journey over the last couple of weeks has been a really important wake-up call that we've still got so much to do. Not just black versus white, discrimination full stop, discrimination full stop. Because we have to get there together. The only way it's going to work is getting there together. And I know you're a strong advocate of that. I love what you posted on LinkedIn about it's not black versus white, it's everyone against racism. It really resonates with me. But that's the same for every area of discrimination that currently exists. And they do exist in all businesses and certainly in Kantar too. So it goes back to that point of governance and groundswell. We need to do the safe sharing. We need to do the education. We need to listen more, learn more, but we also need to act more. And being a market research agency, a phrase I really like is data has no opinion. Data, it's the humans that then interpret the data and bring the opinions into it. So we also need a good grounding in data and metrics that we hold ourselves accountable for going forward. So that's what we're also working on as well.
And we'd love to work with you guys as well, with black leaders as well. So I know we've just set that up, but I think it's really important. So when you have data, you can realize the problem within an organization and the things that you have to improve. But I do agree with you. A lot of things can be a knee-jerk reaction from organizations, and I think a lot of organizations say, "Oh, we need to just concentrate on black," and that's good, and you do. You need to rectify the injustices that has happened within organizations. But as I'm also a firm believer that discrimination is discrimination, just like you. So why can't you just talk about equality for everyone? And that's quite a simple concept. If someone's disabled, they should have the same opportunities as the white man from Harvard. Do you know what I mean? It's simple, but it's a very effective way to think. I always simplify things, and it makes things a lot easier. But
isn't that half the problem with the world? We overcomplicate everything, and actually, it goes back to that point I mentioned earlier. No one's born to hate. Yeah. It's that simple. And total inclusivity. Another phrase I love is nobody's good at everything, but everybody's good at something. And when you empower and inspire people to be good at what they're good at, and then you bring all of that together, that's when it becomes unstoppable. That's prevalent not just in the world and society, but in business too, right? That's something I'm very passionate about. How do we identify what each individual is and bring that diversity of thinking and skill sets to the table so we win more clients?
Have you got any are you doing anything towards what's the words? Gosh, my mind's gone blank. Statistics or positive discrimination as regards to the senior leadership. Are you doing anything towards that? Are you setting yourselves targets towards having a more inclusive executive team? Or is it just something that you haven't discussed yet?
we have discussed it, and we do have in 2017 we set gender targets.
Yeah.
Because the market research industry, every report you read will tell you that it's very skewed to white middle class males. That's a fact. We do our own work with the inclusion index on that to support the industry data. So we had targets, and we have targets for gender diversity, and now we're working on targets. We have been, it was before the recent events, on ethnic representation as well. Yeah. So yes, targets are really important. But again, with everything, there's a balance, because what targets can't be is check boxes and lip service. Because I fundamentally believe, you know, I hired we have an amazing chief marketing officer that was hired last year, just over a year ago, and she's an amazing, inspiring Black single mum. Dion, yeah. But she wasn't hired just because of that. She was hired because she's also got amazing experience in technology. And our industry is being disrupted by technology, and if we don't get on board with that faster, we're going to be left behind as an industry. So my passion is, yes, we get the right person for the job every time, but because if you don't, and you just do it because you feel it's the right thing to do from a diversity perspective of what someone looks like or what someone says, you don't set them up for success either. And really important.
Yeah, and I truly agree with that. You've got to have the right person for the right job, but there's lots of talent out there as well. But I think the mistake a lot of organizations do is set a sales target, and somebody that might not be quite ready for that role yet is put into that and then set up to fail. But there's so much more work to be done, as you said. But what do you feel your biggest barriers are to full inclusion, or what do you think your biggest barriers to full inclusion have been, should I say?
It's the same with also being a progressive business in terms of commercial offers, right? It's behavior change. As a leader, I've been a leader for 25 years. Well, no, sorry, I've been in my career for 25 years, but I've been a C-suite leader for over 7. And behavior change is the hardest thing you will ever have to do. I've worked in different organizations. It's the hardest thing to do, because as humans, we're wired to survive. You know, it's years ago, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, that we were cavemen and cavewomen trying to fight to eat. But that's in our DNA. We're wired to survive and fight. And it's really trying to get that balance right, where you become passionate about bouncing back and being resilient and being determined without causing an affront or causing uproar and anger. And that's tough, because like I said, we're a global business. So there will be things that matter in some markets, but not at the same time in others. So trying to get that balance right to ensure that everyone feels like they're important, because they are, is a challenge, and I think will always be a challenge in any global business. But the most important thing, and the thing that people all do resonate with, is if we don't reflect our consumers, how can we be a successful business? You know, there's enough data out there now from McKinsey's or Korn Ferry's to say inclusion and diversity is not just the right thing to do, it's imperative for business growth. Well, that's the reason why. You know, you've got to be a reflection of the world out there if you want to grow as a business. And that does actually provide a coming together point, no matter what country our employees are in and what they're currently focusing on at the point in time.
Yeah. Sometimes, you know, when they say, you know, it's a business imperative for profits, I don't know how that fits with me personally. Sometimes, you know, I get that, the sentiment, but I think, you know, it shouldn't be just about profits that, you know, you get a diverse team, although diversity of thought is amazing. It's just something that everybody should be doing. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy.
Totally agree, because, you know, even in our own personal lives, right? When someone was kind and inclusive to us, we grew and helped others. It's infectious, right? It's infectious. But I will say, you know, with COVID-19 and all, you know, that it's a really strange inflection point that the whole world is experiencing a same challenge at the same time. It's changing inconsistently from one market to the next, but we're all businesses are looking at cash flow. And what all leaders are challenged with is getting the right balance between what's ethically right and commercially viable. And that's also not easy.
No, it isn't. But obviously, we're in unprecedented times. We'll go into that in a second. But I need to know, you know, culture change is something within organizations that not a lot of people find easy to change, and you touched upon it a little bit before. So what advice would you give to other CEOs, diversity leaders, to help them tackle culture change within their organizations? Because I've been to lots of organizations where, especially up north. I mean, you've got such a diverse range of people, but in Liverpool, I've been into offices, and Liverpool's got the oldest black community in the UK. But when I've gone into an office of like 2,000 people, I've been the only black person in the whole office, and you feel so it says to me the culture is not very inclusive at all. And when you do go into an environment like that, you often find out with lots of microaggressions and various things like that you wouldn't want to experience as a person. So what advice would you give to other CEOs to tackle culture change and to have that influence on culture change?
Well, I think it's, first of all, culture is behavioral norms. So it needs to be a habit. That's what culture is. And sometimes it just gets pocketed into an HR thing, or I don't know, a transformational leader thing. But actually everyone has an accountability to drive the behavioral norms and habits that build a culture. If you don't have everyone being accountable and owning it and seeing that it's an important part of their reason for being, it never scales. And so that's part of the challenge, because you're right. And so I encourage my leaders to put themselves out of their comfort zone. Put yourself in a situation where you feel uncomfortable. They should be doing that anyway as leaders, because that's how we stay ahead of the competition. But we encourage our leaders to do that. We also encourage our leaders to listen and learn, rather than expect to have a voice on everything or an opinion on everything. And that's been more poignant, as I said earlier, over the last couple of weeks. Because until you really listen and really learn, and you won't, it's okay if you don't get it immediately, you really can't drive the change in the way that matters. So for me, culture is a habit that should be an infectious way of behaving, just normally, to your point, every day, just normally every day. But long-standing successful companies, big companies, remember, are built on legacy inherited behaviors. So unconscious biases, right? We all have them. So it's really important to break those down. And there is some good unconscious bias training, but there's some bad stuff as well. So that's a challenge in itself. Well, we've learned that. But it goes back to where I started this conversation with you. Use your own experiences to pay forward. Because the minute you root it in business, in a human truth, rather than necessarily a business truth that's wrapped up in complicated language or the wrong way of saying things, you never get the traction, because a leader's job is to influence and inspire and make others look good. I think leadership is changing. When I grew up, my managers, it was very command and control. Yeah. And actually that was easy, because you kind of knew what you had to do, otherwise you got fired. Yeah. But it really wasn't very inclusive. And I think now EQ leadership is coming to the fore, which is really exciting. But I'm an EQ leader, right? More than an IQ leader, and therein lies the challenge, because you are going to have to make some tough decisions for the health of the business, and you will beat yourself up for months about it, but you have to do it. So there's all these sort of tensions and challenges that naturally come with leadership.
Yeah. And I think on a personal level, we've talked to lots of CEOs, and one of the reasons why we did inclusive CEOs is that we want to move it away from a HR initiative, to a business imperative, like you said. And one of the things that I like about you, and I've seen with other CEOs that are successful in changing culture change, is that you are accessible to your staff. A lot of CEOs are in their own little office. Don't bother me. I've got lots of work to do. I'm just too important to bother with everybody else on the operational side. Whereas I know for a fact that you will go and then talk to people in the operational side. You'll ask people how they're doing. You're positive. You've such a positive energy that people are naturally drawn to you anyway. And so you're leading the culture from the very front. And that's so crucial and you inspire your teams. So I've met people that are underneath you, and they look up to you so much. And that's an amazing thing to have as a leader. And then once they know that, you're positive about them as an individual, then the culture change can change quite rapidly, actually. And actually, I'm not going to put up with no nonsense from any bigoted middle managers or stuff like that. You'll be out the door because we're just not going to put up with that. We only want positive, equal people in this organization, and that's what you resonate with.
Well, that's nice to hear. Thank you. Because sometimes leaders, it's quite lonely sometimes at the top. So it's nice to have feedback. Thank you for that. And then that comes back to as well, you also have to have policies, right? We launched back in February last year a zero tolerance policy to any discrimination. And we've been very clear on that and reinforced it again over and over again. But you can't, to your point, you can't just put that out there and then not live and die by it. The problem there is you can't be the eyes and ears on the ground all the time to see where it's happening or where it's not happening. And as I mentioned earlier, there clearly is areas where we've got to improve. So it's trust, and a team that trusts you is really important, because you need them to help you steer the ship. You can't do it on your own. But building that trust, you have to put a lot of work into that. No one has the right to just be trusted because they're in a senior role as a C-suite leader. You have to earn trust. I really believe that. And that goes back to that command and control point. It was like, I'm the leader, so what I say goes. And it was just like, oh, okay then. And like I said, easier, but not a sustainable way to do things.
But you don't get the best out of your employees as well when you do that. People then are leaving at the first opportunity to go.
Right.
You've got you rule with an iron fist, but people will go with an iron fist as well. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
And when you lead and people and you empower people, you'll find that they will give you so much more to the organization, to you as a boss, and everything else like that, which is really empowering and actually drives business benefits as we just discussed. But we're in unprecedented times, Karen, and we're coming to the close. So, but this is 3 months in to COVID at the time of this recording, and it's been an emotional roller coaster for lots of people. For myself, it's been quite good as regards to I've spent time with my children, learned to slow down, various other things, because life can be very, very fast. But what are the do's? But for D&I, and especially for your employees, what are the do's and don'ts for diversity inclusion during and preceding COVID-19? What are your top tips?
So my top tips are stay focused on it. It has to be top of the agenda and top of the priority, because it's easier to just say, well, I've just got to focus on cash flow, so I'm just going to let everything else come along with that. And for Kantar, you will know, Paul, we were recently acquired by private equity, and cash flow is very important in a private equity world. So as well as COVID, we've got all those pressures going on in Kantar. But the intent is to have a healthier business. And what I will say about our owners is they are very passionate about as a diverse and inclusive workforce, which is great. So what would my tips be? Have your metrics rooted in truth and evidence. Stay focused on them. If you have to make tough decisions about workforces, which all leaders are looking at the moment, make sure they're rooted in ways that don't compromise the hard work that's been achieved on inclusion and diversity, because it is hard work, right? The journey we've been on has taken 3 years and we're still far from perfect. So you can't undo all of that. And also keep your employees inspired. I mean, we have to anyway, right? They're on the front line still with clients, and they're having to deal with connecting with clients in very different ways. You mentioned it earlier, we haven't got this face-to-face contact anymore. We're connecting virtually. So inspire your teams to be find a way to really upgrade it, to be bold in taking new actions, and then bouncing back when things don't quite work out. And I think they're important. That's an entrepreneurial framework that I actually love, but it also applies to inclusion and diversity as well, because as we said, behavior change is the hardest thing to do, and not everyone will come immediately. But if you keep going and keep influencing and keep inspiring, some people do eventually come. I've seen it myself. So
would you say, obviously it's been challenging times for everybody. I've said I've been very lucky, but there's people that have been in isolation for a long time, and now as offices are starting to people start to go back into the offices. Are you putting any initiatives in place to help them? For instance, with a data-driven company, you might have a lot of people on the autism spectrum that work for your organization, and change can sometimes throw them quite a lot. Are you doing any initiatives like that for your organizations? And what have you done during COVID for your, have you checked into teams, or, have you done anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, well, first and foremost, we had to make sure that everyone could work from home, which when you've got 28,000 employees is no mean feat. So I want to give a shout out to our IT teams because they were phenomenal. We also used to connect in various different ways. So Skype, Zoom. So we now all connect through Microsoft Teams, which is, again, a commonality that everyone engages with, no matter where they are in the world. So that's also enabled us to be more in touch with people and connect more proactively. And actually, in a fun way too, I've been in meeting. I got invited to a Zumba session the other day, and I was just like, look, listen, nobody needs to see that, but I appreciate being included.
This from Kantar?
Yeah,
Yeah.
from the teams at Kantar, yeah. So that people are being more inclusive in much more creative ways, which is really helpful because of the situation, actually. My business focuses a lot on first-party data, and we were saying before COVID, it's ironic how there's less community in a more connected world because you've got people with headphones on, in mobile phones, in screens. But actually, one of the good things that's come out of COVID is the sense of community and humanity that's come back and the focus there. So it's how do we keep that and build on that? It's also how do we use the fact that everyone has been able to work flexibly from home, how do we keep that going so that we support people who need more flexible hours as well. But then there's a balance there of how do we bring people back safely who want to come back, because there are some people that want to be back in the office, they don't want to be at home anymore because they either live on their own or they've got a lot of stuff going on at home. So it's a balance, and there we're obviously following government guidance in each country. Our office in Millbank in London is a big office, but at the moment we can only bring people back in September, and that would only be at around 20% capacity because we have to do social distancing and stuff. So again, it's a complex mix of actions, but what we are ensuring is we're proactive on ensuring we use all the learnings from COVID to actually help us grow in a healthier way going forward. So in summary, safety for our employees, keeping our priority, employees as our number one priority, safety for them, more creative ways to be inclusive and fun ways too, and then also taking time to pause, assess, adapt and act in a much more nimble way, because market researchers tend to be very retrospective and want a perfect set of data and a perfect plan. What COVID's taught us is the power of a pivot. And the fact that you need enough data and then you need to move and then adapt and as you go and flow and ebb on that. And I think that's the same for culture as much as it is our offer. Fantastic.
Well, that kind of brings us to the end of this amazing Inclusive CEO Inclusion Talks. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've been totally inspired by you and your story, the bits I didn't know, and thank you so much for sharing that. I think sure our listeners will be inspired too. Have you got any final thoughts or anything else that you might want to add before we go?
Well, I want to thank you, Paul. You inspire me every single day, every post I read. So thank you. It's a real privilege. My final thoughts in summary really are be kind to each other, first and foremost. See your challenges that it's in the moments where you feel at your weakest and you're going to give up, but you still keep going, that you're actually at your strongest. And there's lots of that going on at the moment. It's about really sort of understanding how you can learn more, listen more, and act more. It will be different in different cities, countries, but everyone can do something. So that, and then really about the power of mentorship and reverse mentorship. So you mentioned, neurodiversity, and we have a partnership at Kantar with the Special Olympics, and it's a 4-year partnership. And my mentor there is a guy called Ian Harper, who's amazing. He is one of the athletes at Special Olympics, and he has intellectual disabilities, but he teaches me so much about pace. And moving at the pace of the individual. So that's yet another important thing as well. Reverse mentoring, putting yourself out your comfort zone to really try and understand, learn more so that you can act more with purpose, because that's what will make a difference. And then finally, you can't do this on your own. It's all about us coming together. We need a morale explosion where we're all working together, because doing it on your own is hard work and actually not going to get us there.
No, it's not. Thank you very much, Caroline. We've got a series of inclusion talks that's going on throughout the year as well. So make sure you stay tuned and subscribe and share with your networks, and because we need to have shared learning from influential people like Caroline and others as well. So thank you, and till the next time, we shall see you soon.